I am Andrea Gonzalez with Trellis Strategies, and we are so happy to have you today. Thank you for joining us. You have tuned into the New Hampshire statewide findings from the Student Financial Wellness Survey. Today, we're going to take an in-depth look at the newly released statewide findings from the Fall 2025 Student Financial Wellness Survey. We look forward to sharing key trends affecting student success and an opportunity to identify action that campuses and policymakers can make to improve student outcomes. As you listen to the discussion today, please state questions in the chat or in the Q&A. We are happy to address those at the end of our presentation. We will be sending out the recording to all who registered, even if they couldn't join us today. Numbers are leveling off. I will go ahead and hand it over to Carla Fletcher, our Principal Research Associate.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you to everyone for joining us today to take a look at student wellness in New Hampshire. I'm going to go ahead and we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Carla Fletcher, Principal Research Associate at Trellis Strategies. I focus on higher education policy issues through the lens of affordability and wellness. And I work with institutions, associations, and government entities using research to help policymakers and practitioners advocate for student access and success. And I've been working on the Student Financial Wellness Survey for the past 5 years or so. So really happy to share some results today from New Hampshire. Let's go on down the line to Christiana.
Hi, my name is Christiana Thornton. I'm president and CEO of Granite Advance. We are a statewide nonprofit in the state of New Hampshire that is focused on helping students to identify their college and career aspirations and help them to fund their futures. And I'm excited to be here today, Carla.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Matt Wallace. I also work at Granite Advance with Christiana. I'm the Vice President of Education and Career Pathways, which means I have the privilege of serving the awesome team who does the boots on the ground work throughout the state and help manage our scholarship program. Glad to be here.
I'm Abby Willems, and I am a research strategist here at Trellis, and that means that I work with a lot of our institutions through the recruitment and onboarding process, as well as working with institutions to make sense of their findings and figure out what the next steps are. So excited to present some of the findings today.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. And just to introduce our two organizations a little bit more, in case you're not familiar with us, Trellis Strategies is a nonprofit research and technical assistance firm with more than 40 years of experience supporting education and workforce systems. Since 2018, we have surveyed over 9 million students nationwide. Our work combines quantitative and qualitative research to help institutions and partners use data to inform strategy, program design, and policy, particularly around student success, financial wellness, and basic needs, which is obviously a big focus in the Student Financial Wellness Survey. And then Christiana is going to talk about Granite Advance.
So as I mentioned, Granite Advance is a nonprofit in the state of New Hampshire that's mission is to support New Hampshire students and families in navigating their education and career pathways. And I'm so excited about this opportunity. I would say, as I thought back about today and sort of how we got to this point, a number of years ago, I had the opportunity to see some of the work that Trellis had done, and they were sharing some statewide information from Texas, and then went on to show information about a number of states throughout the country as they had started to build out this data. And I remember thinking, wow, it would be so impactful to our state if we had an opportunity to really understand the makeup of students in our state. And we're really excited about that prospect. And it finally came to fruition about 2 years ago. We were really pleased to partner with Trellis to start collecting that information. And our role in this has predominantly been helping to connect Trellis with institutions in the state of New Hampshire and encouraging institutions to consider participating. There is tremendous information and knowledge. We felt that there was a gap in an understanding of what the needs of New Hampshire students are around financial wellness. And this was really the first step in gathering that information. As a nonprofit in the state of New Hampshire, we're really focused on trying to find opportunities to support students, and in particular, supporting students that may face challenges and financial difficulties that could deter them from being able to continue their education. And the findings of this report have really underscored the reason why our organization has chosen to make investments over the past couple of years, in particular in emergency assistance, things like auto repair bills, housing, food insecurity, things that we know really can stand in the way of students being able to continue their education. What we found is that even what seems like a small amount can be incredibly impactful. And we have been really excited and really our hearts are warmed oftentimes by the feedback that we get from students across the state of New Hampshire that have received these grants and are able to then continue on their educational pathways. We are really excited and hope that this is a first step in the opportunity to share with everyone a little bit more about what makes up the student populations in our state and take that information, that data, to better understand how we can dedicate our resources, how we can partner with other organizations in the state to come alongside students of all ages and backgrounds. And I would say for me, this was underscored this year as I had a college freshman of my own, and he ran out of money. Surprisingly, like a college athlete ran out of money. He had no more food left and said, "Hey, Mom, could you put some more money on my account?" And I think based on the information and the stories that I had heard, it really hit me in thinking like, wow, my child has the opportunity to call home and I'm in a position to be able to give him those funds and ensure that he has food to eat. But as we look at the data, we now understand that there's a lot of students nationally and even in our state that are struggling with things like food insecurity. And so this just gives us sort of a peek into that, which we hope will allow others to think about how we can come together to help solve some of those challenges. And so super excited to partner with Trellis and have the opportunity for them to share this really impactful data with us. So thank you and look forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you so much. That was really good context for the state. And I also think about that when I think of my kids turning to me for food money or whatnot, just how lucky we are to be in a space where we can support them with that. And others may not be in that position. So important to look at this data. So the data that we'll be sharing today is from our flagship survey, which is the Student Financial Wellness Survey. This is a self-reported online survey of post-secondary students. We implement it every fall. It captures the financial well-being, basic needs security, mental health, and related indicators of student success of students that are currently attending institutions. The institutions use these results for a range of purposes, including fundraising, program development, assessment of initiatives, and building a culture of care for their students. And then later on, I know Matt's going to get into how that information can also be used on a broader scale, not just at the institutional level, but at a broader scale to implement change. And Christiana had already talked about some of that as well. So these are the New Hampshire institutions that were in both of our 2024 and 2025 survey. So for this analysis, we have combined both years to be able to include all of these institutions together. So as I'm going through the data and when Abby's doing her parts, the data for New Hampshire and for national are combined for 2024 and 2025. Okay. And then these are the survey metrics. Again, for both years, we're looking at undergraduates across New Hampshire. We had 2,561 responses out of about 27,000 plus students for a response rate of 9.2%. And our overall response rate amongst all of the undergraduates in the survey for those 2 years was 7.8%. So saw a little bit greater participation in New Hampshire, which is nice to see. But around 8 or 9% is what we typically get in the survey, and that's a rate that we're pretty happy with. Special populations. In the reports that schools receive and broader organizations receive on this survey data, we note some special populations of students that have been shown in research to experience particular barriers to success in higher education. 14% of respondents in New Hampshire reported being a parent to a child or children. These students are more likely to struggle with financial insecurity and basic needs insecurity compared to their childless peers. 77% of respondents said they were working for pay while enrolled. Students who work, particularly in the community college sector, often identify first as workers and then as students. And when that student persona is a lower priority, it may become more difficult to focus on academics and persist to graduation. 1% of respondents among the New Hampshire respondents reported being former foster youth. And while this is a very small percentage of the population, these students often lack the financial means, stability, and support to be successful in college. In fact, fewer than 1 in 10 former foster youth hold any kind of college credential. So this population is very vulnerable and they may need special attention. And then 38% of New Hampshire respondents said that they were the first in their immediate family to attend college, or that neither of their parents had a 4-year degree. First-generation students may need more help understanding how to navigate the higher education landscape because they don't have that family knowledge to guide them through that. So let's dive into the findings, starting with financial security. This is a foundational element of academic success and overall student well-being, allowing students to focus on learning rather than survival. So this slide highlights how fragile students' finances can be. Almost half of New Hampshire respondents, 47%, said that they would have trouble coming up with $500 for an unexpected expense. This difficulty accessing even what some might consider a modest amount of emergency funds underscores the fragile financial security that many students face. Unexpected expenses like medical bills or car repairs can quickly create financial crises and potentially disrupt students' academic progress and overall well-being. Many students said that they had run out of money at least once since the beginning of the year that they took the survey. Among New Hampshire respondents, 45% said that they had never run out of money during the year, but 55% had run out of money at least once, and 16% said they'd run out of money 8 or more times between January and late October or early November in 2024 or 2025, whenever they were taking the survey. And we define running out of money as exhausting available funds and not being able to afford regular expenses. And 51% of respondents said that they were worried about being able to pay their current monthly expenses. Only 28% disagreed or strongly disagreed that they worry about this, so less than a third of respondents were feeling comfortable that they were able to pay their current monthly expenses without worry. Well over half of respondents reported using a credit card since the beginning of the year that they took the survey, 62%. We've also seen just broadly in society an increase in the availability of buy now, pay later across all kinds of products and services. And we do see that college students use those services as well. While buy now, pay later may offer quick access to funds, they can create longer-term financial challenges if payments are not made on time or in full. And using it across a number of different items means having multiple repayment schedules to track, which can become complicated and overwhelming. So while it can be not a risky product if used correctly, it can also lead to charges and fees if the students are not making those payments on time. So we don't have that data for this survey just yet, but we do see that 19% of respondents said that they had used buy now, pay later in the year that they took the survey. And then smaller percentages of respondents had also used payday loans and auto title loans during the year that they took the survey. These loans usually have very high interest rates and short repayment timelines, which can lead to a cycle of debt that is difficult to escape. And with auto title loans, there's a risk of losing your vehicle if the loan isn't repaid. Now, among those who had used a credit card, 88% of them said that they had used it to pay for basic necessities, such as food, transportation, or housing. And that in itself is not necessarily a bad thing, but it all depends on how you repay that credit card debt, right? So 80% of our credit card users agreed or strongly agreed that they always pay their credit card bill on time. but only 52% said they fully pay off their credit card balance each month. So some students are incurring interest as they carry over a balance month after month. And a lot of these students are using that credit card to pay for their basic necessities. So some of them are paying interest on their basic necessities costs month after month. A majority of respondents said that they had experienced financial difficulties or challenges while in college. Among those who said yes to this first question, that's 67%, 43% of them said that they had difficulty concentrating on their schoolwork because of their financial situation. So when financial concerns compete with academic demands, students may struggle to fully engage in their education. And that's where we see a little bit of a connection there to their academics. And then looking at public assistance use, about 1 in 5 New Hampshire respondents reported receiving public assistance during the year that they took the survey. This was largely in food and medical assistance, but could also include housing assistance, unemployment assistance, childcare assistance, or utility assistance. We changed the categories that we show between the two survey years, so I wasn't able to lay this out with both years together, but we can see the percent who received assistance compared to those who did not, and are able to take a look at that across both years. Okay, our next section is about paying for college. This is a series of questions that we ask students about the different resources that they use to pay for college, and I have it organized into groups by type of resource. So on the left side, the first two sources, current income and personal savings, are very commonly used among respondents, with 46% in each category saying that they use those to help pay for college. The next group is family support, and it includes general financial support from family and also student loans that the parents take out. So 38% of respondents report having some support from family, and 21% had parents take out loans for their education. And then the grants group includes Pell Grants or other grants, scholarships, and military or veterans benefits. Pell Grants or other grants were used by 42% of respondents. Scholarships, very popular among the New Hampshire respondents, used by 65%. And then military and veterans benefits were used by a small percentage of respondents. And then the last group is credit. This includes student loans and credit cards. 46% of respondents reported using student loans to help pay for college, and 13% reported using a credit card. And then we also have some questions in the survey about the FAFSA. The vast majority of New Hampshire respondents said that they had completed the FAFSA in the year that they were completing the survey, or someone had on their behalf. 78% said yes to this question. Of the 19% of respondents who said no, they received a second question asking them why. And then in that second chart are the options they had available to choose from. And it was a select all that applies, so it doesn't add up to 100%. 48% said that they did not think they'd be eligible for financial aid. 30% said that they could afford college without financial aid. And then the next three options are ones that institutions can help with. 24% said that they didn't want the possibility of taking on debt. So some students may not understand that the FAFSA is used for more than just student loans, and that they don't have to accept the loan aid that's offered. The next two, saying the application was too much work and that they did not have enough information, are definitely places where some assistance may have helped these students complete and submit the application successfully. And then from here, I'm going to turn it over to Abby to go through the last couple of sections and talk about how to participate in the survey in the future.
Thanks, Carla. So now we're going to look at student well-being and some basic needs and mental health statistics. Starting here with food security, we see that 35% of respondents reported experiencing low or very low food security in the 30 days prior to taking the survey. Some common responses were that students ate less than they felt they should, cut the size of their meals, or were hungry but did not eat because they couldn't afford it. Despite many respondents saying that they had recently experienced food insecurity, only 16% of respondents reported visiting a food pantry, either on or off campus. And we know that there can be many reasons why students don't use food pantries even when they are experiencing food insecurity. So there could be stigma, shame, time constraints, or just feeling like others are more in need than they are. Awareness may also be part of the issue. We ask campuses when we do their onboarding if they have a food pantry. And so among students who were at campuses that had a food pantry, that we could find on their website or in that onboarding process, 38% didn't know that their school had a food pantry, and 5% incorrectly said that their school didn't have one. So increasing awareness there could help students connect to that resource. Next up, looking at housing security. 34% of New Hampshire respondents had experienced housing insecurity in the 12 months prior to taking the survey. This can include things like having difficulty paying rent or not being able to pay the full amount of rent, having difficulty paying utility bills, moving in with people due to financial problems, living with others beyond the expected capacity of the living space because of finances, or having to move frequently. And 9% of respondents had experienced some form of homelessness in the past 12 months from when they took the survey, or since starting college. The most common form of homelessness was temporarily staying with someone while looking for housing or couch surfing, but the scale also includes things like being kicked out or evicted, sleeping in places that aren't meant for human habitation, like vehicles, streets, bus stops, etc., or staying in a shelter. And then we also include mental health as part of student basic needs. So mental health challenges we know are very common on college campuses. So in the 14 days leading up to the survey, about 27% of respondents reported experiencing symptoms of depression, and 44% indicated experiencing symptoms of anxiety. And these are based on answers to the PHQ-2 and the generalized anxiety disorder, the GAD-2, and the answers to these. So this is not a diagnostic tool, but rather students experiencing these symptoms. And then positive mental health supports concentration, motivation, and resilience, which are key factors we know in learning and success. So by recognizing mental health as a core component of student success, colleges help students thrive and lay the foundation for their future. Another element of mental health is the loneliness epidemic. We know that this is a crisis in the country, along with on college campuses, as we see that many students are reporting that they feel lonely. So 57% of respondents reported feeling lonely sometimes or always. There is, however, more awareness of mental health services within New Hampshire institutions compared to the awareness of food pantries, which is great to see. So students do tend to know that there are mental health services on campus, with 79% of students indicating that their campus had mental health services, 19% saying they didn't know, and 2% saying that they there were not mental health services on their campus. Next up, looking at transportation. So among students who said that they had a car or usually use a car to get to class, 79% said that their car was reliable or very reliable, but 21% said that it wasn't reliable at all or was only somewhat reliable. And then regardless of how students got to campus, 15% of respondents said they missed class due to a lack of reliable transportation, which can be disruptive to students' academic progress. Next, we're going to look a little at the perceptions of institutional support and value and how they feel about their education. So looking here at the perceptions of support across New Hampshire, 48% of respondents said that they had reached out to staff or faculty on campus about their financial situation, while 50% said that they had not. 48% of respondents, which is the same number here, and so there may be some Maybe coincidence, maybe correlation, but 48% of respondents felt their school had the support services to help them address their financial situation. So these perceptions play a critical role in student well-being and overall success, because when students believe that their institution cares about them and provides the support that they need, they're more likely to seek help, stay engaged, and persist through challenges. Next up, looking at the perceptions of return on investment, 68% of respondents believe that the cost of college is worth the investment in their financial future, and even more said that a college degree will provide them with a higher quality of life. And it's heartening to see that most students still feel this way, because we know that on average, earning a higher education credential comes with financial and non-financial benefits to the person, their family, and their broader community, even though I think the national conversation around this says that's no longer the case, but we know that the data says that that is still true. So it's nice to see that students who are enrolled are still feeling that. And then a little bit about the Student Financial Wellness Survey and how to get involved if you are an institution who's interested in participating. We've had such awesome participation from New Hampshire institutions over the last couple of years. And it's great to be able to have this kind of statewide data so that both the state and the Gradient Advance can use it on the statewide level. And I think Matt's going to talk about that here in our next slide. But if you're interested in participating, either an institution who participated in 2024 and wants to get on board for 2026, we have a lot of institutions that participate every other year. Or if you're a new institution, the best way to get started is either to email surveys@trellisstrategies.org. That goes to several members of our team, but I will likely be the one to respond to do your onboarding, or to scan this QR code here that talks a little bit about all the steps. So I'm not going to go into all the steps because I'm going to turn it over to Matt. But the deadline to have everything together to participate for this fall is September the 21st. So we do have a good bit of time. It's always nice to be having these conversations in June when there is some runway for folks to participate if there is interest. And then the survey will launch on October the 19th and close on November the 10th. So now I'm going to turn it over to Matt to talk a little bit about Gradient Advance's work and how they've been using these results.
Yeah, thanks, Abby. And before I talk about how Gradient Advance uses this and a little bit more about the work we do, I do want to give a shout out to Abby and the whole team at Trellis. I've worked with several of the institutions that did this survey in partnership with the Trellis team to help get that process started. And I just think the service level's really impressive. And Abby's been a great person to walk through IBR review and different campus conversations about what data they're willing to put into the survey and not. So I've just been really impressed over these last 2 recruitment cycles with the awesome work that the Trellis team does. Gradient Advance loves this kind of data, right? Because it allows us to take a look at what we offer and say, hey, is there ways that we can augment and make changes to our offerings? And some of those things are at a higher level, right? Christiana mentioned earlier that it really reaffirmed the work that we were doing to do emergency grant aid at the community college system and then expand to the university system. But there's also some smaller things that come out of it, right? It helps influence our messaging. There was 3 things that, as Carla and Abby went through, that kind of stuck out to me about how a quarter of the people who didn't file a FAFSA did that strictly because they were afraid that by doing so, they were taking on debt. So to me, that's a real messaging opportunity for Gradient Advance as we're working with families on their college planning. 2 other ones, the use of credit card and buy now, pay later loans and how those have much higher risk. And the awareness of food pantries being available on campus that are typically exclusive for those colleges. That's a real opportunity for us in Gradient Advance, and I think the colleges, but also other community-based organizations that are on the call to help increase these messages. We also use this data to think about some of the other pieces that we've done over the years. And we first became aware of food pantries on campuses, they exist, but sometimes they're running short on food, right? So their utilization is so high that they need to have some increased access. So we started doing $2,000 to the university system food pantries for the last couple of years. So we're able to take data such as the Student Financial Wellness Survey and really augment our services to help make sure that we're meeting the needs of the state. And then we also I wanted to take a quick moment just as a reminder, a little more in depth of some of the work that Granite Advance does. As Christiana mentioned before, we kind of look at our work in two ways. It's to find your future, then find your direction, then fund your future. So to help people understand their direction, right? Whether that's they are going to a 4-year college, 2-year college, into the workforce, we provide one-on-one support for students for appointments in our office or virtual, that we can help them from anything hey, I have this inkling of an idea that I want to do this professionally, to can you help me file my FAFSA, to now I have a bill I don't know how to pay for it. Can you help me piece those pieces together? We also do presentations in high schools, colleges, universities, community-based organizations throughout the state, so we can serve a larger group than we can in that one-on-one setting. And then we hold a series of larger events throughout the year, Destination College being kind of our signature event. This last year, we're at Plymouth State University, a day where we get together for high school juniors, and we had almost 600 people on campus to kind of walk through that start of the college search. And then we also help students fund their education. And I should clarify, when I say students, I use that as in the broadest term. That can be somebody going to college, 2-year trade, the adult learner who is trying to reskill, upskill, make a mid-career job change. So just using that as a really broad term. So we will help students understand how to pay for college, what a financial aid offer means. Unfortunately, they're not standardized throughout the nation. So if a student gets 5 letters, they could all be a little bit different. And we'll sit with them and help them file their FAFSA, make sure they're getting that in completely accurately. We also offer a scholarship program. So this year we are awarding $1 million to New Hampshire residents across 4-year, 2-year, and trade programs. And that was another thing that data such as the Student Financial Wellness Survey helped us understand is we needed to shift our awarding timeline for how we awarded scholarships, because for a long time we were doing just a fall awarding cycle. As we started looking at the needs for our community, we understood that students going to community college, especially in trade programs, weren't only starting that fall. So we shifted our awarding windows to have 3 windows throughout the year for 2-year programs and trade programs. And then finally, we also offer nonprofit student loans. So student loans that are for parents in the student name, and refinance loans that have rate advantages for those of us, for New Hampshire residents and students attending college in New Hampshire. So we hope we can come alongside you in some of your initiatives in the state to help serve students directly, as well as use the data that we can get to have a better understanding of how we can serve people throughout New Hampshire. And Christiana, I think I hand it back to you now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we had the opportunity to see there's a number of organizations in the state of New Hampshire that are participating in this session today. And in New Hampshire, I think we have the benefit of being like a smaller state, and that has its advantages in terms of our ability to come together collectively, to think about how we can make a bigger impact in the state. And we really appreciate the participation today and people joining us from many of the institutions in the state, also public officials, a lot of nonprofit leaders, where we can now take this information and the data and think, how can we come alongside one another in support of trying to fill some of these gaps, which that is the benefit of living in the Granite State, just that ability to collaborate together and really be able to make a positive impact, I think, in a way that other states might struggle with. So we're really excited about that. I also would say, I want to say kudos to Matt and to Abby and Carla. In the beginning, when we sought out to do this, there was a lot of apprehension because we know that institutions have a lot of burdens, and that seems to be an increasing number of burdens on their plates with limited resources and limited staff. And we were so pleased with the level of support that Trellis provides in making this process as seamless as possible. And so I would encourage schools that may be interested to reach out, because our experience and feedback has been very positive from the institutions that have participated. I think they try at Trellis to make it as seamless as possible, and are fortunate that Matt has the opportunity from Granite Advance to engage with them and sort of work through any challenges that might come up. Our hope is that we will see more and more institutions in the state participate so that we can continue to build out that data and information. We had a strong showing of institutions this year and last year, but there are still a number of schools that we would love to have participate to just continue to broaden that. The more data we have, the better we will be able to make informed decisions and think about opportunities to serve the needs of those students. And I would say, looking at this data, I have the opportunity to serve as a trustee for the university system of New Hampshire. And one of the great opportunities we have is to interface and hear directly from students. And a lot of the presentations that students have made at the university system really echo the findings in this report. And I would say there was a question that was raised that came in that said, how could state budget cuts in New Hampshire to higher education and public assistance impact these students? Our institutions are incredibly strained in New Hampshire due to cuts that we've seen over the past couple of years. And this has really required institutions, nonprofits, and other stakeholders in the state to come alongside and figure out how we can provide additional supports. And so there is an impact, and we are doing our best as a nonprofit in the state to come alongside those institutions and students to try to fill those gaps. But we know those gaps are greater than our ability ourselves. And so we hope with this information, there's just a growing awareness within our state around the challenges that students are facing, and in hopes that we can figure out, how we can do more to draw attention to this and make people aware of those challenges that are being faced by students. The other question was around what impacts could changes to federal student loans have on New Hampshire students. There have been a number of changes in federal student loan policies, most of which come into effect July 1st of this year. I think it's a little bit too soon to tell exactly what the impact of that will be. I would say we as an organization have been working internally and working with partners to think about new ways that we can support students in New Hampshire so that there isn't as significant of an impact. And Matt sort of had alluded to, we have been able to offer a new parent loan and a new refinance product, and also in particular, some new constraints related to grad loans. We've been able to come up with a product that will help to support students that are attending New Hampshire colleges and universities, and are excited to pilot that to do what we can, again, to try and close some of those gaps. But that is the beauty of being in a nonprofit organization in the state of New Hampshire, where you roll up your sleeves and try to figure out how we can come alongside and support. And I guess maybe I will turn it over to, I don't know if Andrea is going to answer some of the other questions that are popping up now.
Yeah, and I can jump in for the Trellis ones. I'll start with the, yeah, no problem. A large percentage of respondents said they believe college is a good investment, which makes sense if the students are in college. Do you have any information on college-age people who are not in college due to financial challenges? We don't from this survey, and that is something that we acknowledge whenever we talk about these stats, is, that we're asking students who are in college if they think it's worth it. So, you expect that to be higher potentially than other populations. And it's just really hard to get a hold of, that particular population. So we don't have stats on that. We have seen, broader surveys done of the population. I think we've all seen news stories on those and their feelings about higher education. So I think we can assume that there's probably, a little bit more negative sentiment for people who are not in college potentially. But it is nice to see that those who are in college are feeling like it's worth it. And that's what we can get from our survey. And then for strategies that institutions have used to combat the stigma around food insecurity, that's a really tough one. And I think one really important thing to do is to make sure that messaging is broad. So you're not targeting students necessarily, because people move in and out of the status of food insecurity. So people can become food insecure really at any point. So I think it's most beneficial to have broad communication about the resources available for students. And it's something that can be talked about in all kinds of places like orientation, first year experience courses. We have heard of some faculty putting that information on their syllabus. So I think there's different ways to get that information out. And when it's put out there, broadly for everybody in a non-judgmental way, I think that goes some way towards reducing the stigma for people who feel like maybe I do need help. Not feeling like it's a big secret that they need to go access that. And then I also thank you, Andrew, for putting all those links in there. So you can take a look at the report and one-pagers and whatnot we have on our website that Andrew is linking to. I also did want to thank Matt and Christiana for noting how hopefully easy it is to work with us on the survey process. We do work really hard to ensure that it is as light a lift for the institution as possible. So we do everything we can to do that. And also, I know I didn't mention it, and I might have missed it if Abby did, but the survey is free. So there is no cost associated with participating in the survey. We offer that as part of our community investment as a nonprofit. So it's really just the hopefully light labor costs on the institution side to get the data request together and think about institutional incentives maybe. And there's a handful of things, but we do try to keep it really light, and there is no overall cost to participate in the survey.
Carla, one thing I wanted to underscore, because I think those partnerships with colleges and universities is obviously, it's so important. And I think one of the things that I've learned in this work, since we have started to hone in on trying to figure out how to provide supports to students that are in school, is just recognizing we have individuals across all of our institutions, both our 4-year, 2-year institutions, that care very deeply about students and are there to support them. And the extent to which we can make students aware that those resources exist is, if you can have a student approach someone within their institution, there are people that care incredibly deeply. Like, this is their life's work. And hearing the stories of transformation that staff at our New Hampshire institutions they've just been able to provide has really been life-changing for a lot of students. And so I've just experienced so much gratitude to see how these individuals working at institutions are coming alongside students. And I think that's really heartwarming. So the extent to which we can ensure that information is out there at institutions to let students know that those resources exist. There are people that are there to help them and guide them and make those linkages, help them to understand, where public assistance might be available, where nonprofit scholarships might be available. There are resources that are available to students. And I think a lot of times it's a matter of just making sure that information is getting into their hands and to just make those connections.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. And it also underscores another thing that I often talk about whenever talking about these things is the importance of training faculty and staff. So they don't need to know, exactly where the resources are, exactly what they are, but what they do need to know is how to receive this information that they might get from a student and then direct them in the proper way. So, like you said, there are people on campuses who this is what they do and they're very passionate and they, help students connect with resources to help them with basic needs or other issues that they're having. And so if faculty and staff know who to warm hand off a student to, that goes a long way to reducing the barriers for students having to navigate, all around campus to try to figure things out. So that is so important.
And there are a lot of partnerships that exist. Even I know, for example, on the seacoast of New Hampshire, became familiar recently. There's an initiative between Public Housing Authority and the Great Bay Community College, where they have staff that are working together that are then not only supporting the students in academic challenges, but also helping to make that connection to one of the questions in the chat is about making our students aware of SNAP benefits, for example. I think those individuals then are trying to make those connections that if a student might be eligible for some type of assistance that they may not be aware of, they're able to help to make those connections. But I think there's always opportunity to ensure that we're able to get the word out. And I know, there's also individuals we've recently started to pull together from all of our institutions that are involved with our emergency grants and helping to share best practices with one another too, and how to connect and reach out and to build that rapport and awareness is something that I think they've been really trying to focus on because there are resources and it's just not always, students have a lot going on. And especially when you look at those stats that talk about the fact that I think it was like 77% are like also working. And then a lot of them are also parents. And so I think it's a matter of just trying to do our best to try to get that information in front of students because it's easy to just get overwhelmed with life and not be able to navigate where you may be able to get some help.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to note that starting with the 2025 survey, we do specifically ask if they have received SNAP in the past year. So for those who were in 2025 or will be in the future, when you get your institutional report, you can see the percentage of your respondents that said that they were using SNAP. So that's hopefully, if you're interested in that, join in the survey and you'll get that data. And then we did get someone saying that at UNH, they have a program called Swipe It Forward, where students, faculty, and staff can donate swipes for the dining hall that can be used by students who request swipes. So there's no stigma because everyone who enters the dining hall does it the same way with their card. So that's a great program. Thank you for putting that in the chat. And that, I think, is all the questions for the moment. Unless we get anything else in the next, we can give it another minute here, but really appreciate everyone's time today. And Christiana, I don't know if you want to, if you have any closing thoughts here.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Trellis for doing this important work. And we're really excited to partner with you. If we can be of help to our New Hampshire partners in making those connections, please reach out to Matt or myself, again, directly to the Trellis folks. We would be really delighted to see the number of participants in the survey continue to grow. The more data we have, the better the information. And we are excited to just continue to grow this project. So thank you guys for making it so easy and look forward, internally within our organization, taking this information and figuring out what steps can we take and working with a lot of our partners that are joining us today to try and come alongside and support the students in our state of all ages, as Matt said earlier today, all ages and backgrounds and their families. So thank you guys so much and appreciate everyone's time in joining us and participating today. And we look forward to continuing this work with you.